Good evening, all, and welcome to another one of our discussions. We are going to be talking about leadership topics. We are going to be sharing our opinions, expressing our perspectives, and hopefully hearing from you, our audience. I am Marjorie Wharton, and I am one of your presenters. And joining me is my colleague, Sonia Lane. Hi, Sonia.
Hi. How's everyone out there?
And we are going to be looking at the topic quiet quitting, nonsense or a worrying trend. And even as Sonia and I were getting ready for this and talking about this before the session, we realized that we might have two slightly different perspectives. And we like that when we come to have these kinds of discussions, don't we, Sonia? Because
Yes.
it makes for a rich discussion, we find.
Hmm.
And so the big question is this something new? Is it something that has been going on for a while? Do we already know how to deal with it? Are we already addressing it? Is it nonsense or is it a trend? And if it is a trend, what is it about that trend that is so worrying? So, we're going to have a discussion. As I said, as we go on, we are hoping to hear from you. So, please share with us your comments, your feedback, your question. And we are hoping to make this a rich experience. So,
Cool.
Sonia,
Hey. Oh, sorry. I'm saying good night from TNT. Hey, Trinidad in the house.
hey, Trinidad in the house.
Hey, Julian. Good night.
Good night and welcome. All right. So, oh, somebody's retired on duty. All right. Happy to
Oh,
have you.
cool.
Happy
Hmm.
to have you. So,
Yes.
Sonia, quiet quitting. When you hear that, what does that mean to you?
Yes. And that's the good question that we want to start with because I hear it in two different ways. And depending on which way you define it, I feel differently.
Mm-hmm.
So, I hear it now today, which is, a TikTok apparently. I'm not on TikTok, so I don't really know, but a TikTok apparently started this, and that person defined it as not, it's, what did he say? You're still performing your duties, but you're no longer subscribing to the hustle culture mentality that work has to be your life. So you're no longer going above and beyond and putting in extra time. So, and then another way that I've heard quiet quitting is where you are coming to work and you're so overwhelmed, you're so exhausted that you're just doing the bare minimum just so you're not fired. And for me, those are two different definitions. And if you have the former where you're like coming to work and you are you're performing your job and doing what you're paid to do, but you recognize that there's life outside of work, then I say you're not quite quitting. That's life. That's a healthy, productive way to approach work, which is to understand that you need rest and recovery. While you're at work, you're giving your all to work, but there are boundaries where work doesn't take over your entire life. That's essential. If it's the latter, where you're coming to work and just doing enough just to not get fired, then that's been around for a long time, and that we can discuss because I think that's the real quiet quitting. You've left the job, but you're still physically there.
Okay, so you see, that's where for me those two are the same thing. Because in essence, if you are doing what your job requires you to do, then you are doing the bare minimum. You are meeting the requirements of your job. You're doing what is necessary. So they can't fire you. And so to me, those two are the same thing. And I will say though that the term quiet quitting, what I guess has so many of us talking about it now, is the first definition,
Hmm.
where it is that you're coming to work, you're not going above and beyond. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that as we think about work and we think about what is required for organizations to be successful now, there is an overwhelming belief among so many of us, especially leaders, managers, and owners in organizations who believe that if we're going to succeed and we're going to thrive, we have to go above and beyond the call of duty. Well, above
Yes.
and beyond the call.
And I don't subscribe to that
Yeah.
at all. And I know leaders do that. I mean, they're basically saying, I like to say there's win-win between organizations and you, the
Mm-hmm.
employee. I feel like when you come to work, and I know that there's certain organizations, big organizations, that basically when they're judging people, they say, if you have a project and you just accomplish, you do the work of the project, that's the bare minimum.
Mm.
You have to do more than doing the project for you to get credit for it. You
Mm-hmm.
have to have impacted the bottom line in some way. So it's not just about coming to work and ensuring that the project is successful. You have to go above and beyond. And I think that that's a win-lose for an employee,
Right. A-
basically.
And you
Yes.
see, for me, where I come in on this topic is I firmly believe that the problem we have and the real worrying trend is that it is so normalized now for us to require people to go above and beyond the job, beyond the call, that
Yes.
we are judging good performance as unacceptable because it is not doing that. You're not there till
Yes.
10 o'clock at night every day. You're not taking work home on Saturdays and Sundays. You're not sacrificing 80% of your life for the job. And
And let
what
me
I
tell
think
you,
this beautiful trend is saying, and they say it's happening mainly among millennials. So, what I think this beautiful trend is saying is asking us now to consider, is the problem how jobs are designed and the expectations of organizations and not what the employee is doing.
yes. The problem is that you calling that quiet quitting, because that is not quiet quitting. When an organization, and today there's so much more to be done with less resources. So an organization thrives when they get to, for lack of a better word, exploit your labor without a
Mhm.
corresponding reward in terms of money. So there's so much to be done. We need you to go above and beyond just to maintain. But that is not
Mhm.
that is not fair, because we know that we are not, when we talk about human resources are the most important things, we are not the chair, the computer. Humans are complex beings that require, you require space, you require recovery, you require
Mhm.
time to process. And so this expectation that you're supposed to give your, complete entire life to work, and that when you don't do that, you're quietly quitting. No, a
Yeah.
big absolute no. I wish I could sit down and talk to this young man, because I'll say, let's reorganize how you, that is not quitting. That is a
Yeah.
normal expectation, and it cannot be sustained. And I feel it's completely different to somebody who comes to work and basically is actively saying, even if I could, I'm not going to do anything um, for you, this organization. I mean, I
Mhm.
could do X, but I'm not going to, even though it is possible and within my day to day activity. So I'm
And I
just going to
think
be brutally honest here.
and I think that's where quiet quitting as it is defined now by the TikTok video is being seen as a worry, and it is being seen as something that's going to impact organization negatively because it is being lumped with what you're talking about, which is that work to rule, that withholding my enthusiasm, that being disengaged at work. It is seen as that, and so there is this fear that suddenly it's happening, but the truth is that that's been happening for a while. There are
Yes.
people in organizations for a long time who have said, I'm coming in here and I'm doing the bare minimum. I'm doing just enough to not be fired.
And I mean, it's active. It is active. They're like, basically, I am going to work to do the minimum, because that requires action. If you've
Mm,
ever been in a project or in a job where people are not doing anything, you know how much it costs you to just sit there and every day be wasting time. And so that's a conscious act on an employee, which should never be um, mixed up or mistaken for, I have given you over 40 hours this week, and I'm just going to take some time to be with my family, to rest and recover, and to ensure that I have a full life outside of work. I really think that that's a disservice when we mix them up.
mm. Well, that may be, but that's where we are now.
Okay.
And so our
That's always
discussion, our discussion here is really how do we view it and how do we deal with it? And I
yes.
think that part of what we need to consider is yes, leaders have a responsibility to try to engage employees and to try to ensure that they understand where the employee is coming from. So if the employee is saying, well, I've put in my 40 and I can only put in my 40 because I need the others to do this with my life or with my children or family, or they're saying, I can give the extra time, I can do it next week, but I can't do it this week. So leaders have the responsibility to understand that. But in addition to that, it goes further, and we have to look at how jobs are designed. Because
Yes.
when you are hiring people in an organization and you're hiring them knowing going in, nobody ever says to the employee, well, you're going to have to work 12 hours a day every single day. You say, well, from time to time, you'll have to go beyond the 4:30. And the
Mm-hmm.
employee says, oh, sure, that's okay. That's no problem. But then it is the norm in the organization to do that every day. And you are criticized or seen negatively if you aren't stepping into it and
Into
accepting
it.
it. And it may be that your life does not allow you to do that.
Precisely. So I think the question you're asking is, how does it make sense in the economy? And there's a reason why people are worried about it. It's a reason why so many leaders are talking about it, because they understand that this is not good for the current way of operation they have, which is we try to get it. We say to people, as you say, oh, you're being employed for 8 hours, but in reality, to do the amount of work you need to do for us to thrive, you're going to have to put in at least 12 hours every day.
Yeah.
And so this quiet quitting, as you're saying, they're concerned, and quite rightly concerned, because, oh, the gig is up. What I've been getting away with forever, how I've conditioned people to think, is now being pulled apart and teased apart.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's a wonderful thing. I hear, like the other day, Microsoft CEO said to the team that for the amount of people that we have in this organization that we're paying for, our productivity levels are not up to standard. And
Mm-hmm.
there's where I say to myself, well, you need to start, number one, look at the expectation of your productivity levels. Are they
Mm-hmm.
realistic? And number two, who's in your organization not carrying their weight? Not
Yeah.
somebody who's, and I'm not talking about the person who's not there for 12 hours. I'm like the people who are there for 8 hours and still not carrying the weight. The true people who
Mm-hmm.
are burdening the other people. But you can't make these blanket statements where, well, we are not up to, productivity level, because that's no longer going to work, particularly after COVID, and having people's mindset about the impact of work and who they can trust. Because a lot of people were told, who may have asked, can I work from home? They were told, no, you cannot. And then COVID
Mm-hmm.
happened, and then they realized, yeah, we could. So I no longer believe you when you tell me that something isn't working or something is not right.
Yeah, and COVID has also had the impact of changing a lot of people's perspective about how much time they're willing to put into work and how much they're willing to give up. Because a lot of people are choosing, yes, working longer hours may be giving me slightly more money. In many instances, it's not. But some people are not choosing to take that extra money rather than have their time.
Yes. And we have a comment
We
right
have a
here.
question right here. Go ahead.
Yes. How about not volunteering for projects or to be team lead where I normally would have? Is that quiet quitting? And that is something I talk to clients who say to me, like, we ask people to step up and be leaders, and they're like, no, I can't take on anymore. I'm already swamped. I don't. And this is not normal, because, people generally want to be
Mm-hmm.
the lead. And the way it's defined now, they will say, yes, that's quiet quitting. I say, no, it is not quiet quitting. It's understanding your capacity and ensuring that you can commit yourself to what you can deliver.
Yeah.
And to me, that's smart.
Yeah. I agree with
That
that.
is
So
normal.
so for once, people, I'm agreeing with Sonia.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with you. That is not quiet quitting. That is simply perhaps the person's tired. Perhaps they don't have the energy. It's not something that you're interested in. And we do talk a lot about this. And Sonia, you do talk a lot about this as well in your book, where you talk about the fact that you are perfectly within your right as an employee to determine how much extra time you're going to give to the organization. So if you choose not to volunteer, which is something that is above and beyond, even though you would have done it before, you're not quiet quitting. You're choosing not to give that extra.
Yeah. And again, I go back to, it must be win-win.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you come to an organization judges you not on whether, on your output, on your value. And so therefore, when you can no longer offer value, they will love you and let you go. You know, we say that in the Caribbean a lot. Let me love you and leave you. Right? And organizations do that. Or
Mhm.
so you have to, and you're the only one in today's world who's now going to do that, who's now really getting to driver's seat and determining, is this winning win-win for me? So if
Mhm.
I'm going to learn something, if I'm going to develop something, then yes, you will volunteer. But if you're getting no options and you don't have the time, then it's not quite quitting to say, no, I don't have the capacity for that. Yeah, and that's good. Yes, setting boundaries. Oh, I see another
Yes,
question.
another comment coming in.
Let me read this.
Is
Is this
this
quite? Oh, you want to go, or you want me
okay?
to?
Is this quiet quitting not also a result of employees going beyond, where is it? I was clicking. No,
Beyond the
beyond the call of
call.
duty and not being recognized, whether it be ineffective design of performance appraisals, allowing for vindictive behavior by managers. And it could be that some of it has come from a place where people are just frustrated. I think that in the organizations where you're seeing people who are doing it, kind of what you're saying, Sonia, that, I'm working to rule, it is because people have been burnt by trying to go above and beyond the call, and nobody appreciates it, nobody recognizes it. Sometimes they are penalized for stepping up and for doing more. They don't see that as worth their while, so they don't bother to do it anymore. So yes, that can be a reason why people are doing it, but that's not quiet quitting.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
frustration.
Yes. Again, they're labeling it as quitting. That is, there's nothing more painful as an employee than when you step up, go beyond the call of your, wherever you are, and put in the effort, and it's not even
And nobody
acknowledged,
cares.
furthermore rewarded. It's
Yeah.
turned into an expectation that you do that all the time, that you
Yeah.
go beyond, that you work harder. And so this is where I get very animated, and I'm like, that is not quite quitting.
Yeah. And it
That is,
definitely is not something for an employee to be penalized for.
yes.
And so, as leaders in organizations, it is important that we understand that this happens a lot, where people step up, and then feel victimized or feel unappreciated, and so they never do it again. And worse, they'll tell the next person about that, and somebody will hear that and say, "Well, you see me, you see what happened to her, that ain't happening to me." So they
Mhm.
won't step up. And then that is where you have the organization then suffering, because it's not benefiting from employees bringing forth their skills and their capabilities.
And their capabilities. So I want to talk about two things. I want to talk
Mhm.
about number one, why I think what organizations should do within, this situation where they feel like people are quiet quitting. And I've already said the first ones. Part one, recognize there's a difference between what people are terming quiet quitting and the people who are really maliciously and willfully withholding their engagement and their productivity. There are people coming into your organization who are not even giving you 8 hours, far less more 12 hours of work.
Mhm.
There are sitting there just, and their whole entire intention is to figure out what little can I do, and it takes thought and
And
intention,
so,
and they're giving it.
for years, we've been calling that employees who are disengaged, or we've been
Yes,
calling it presenteeism,
yes,
or
yes.
working to order. So we
All
already have
working to order.
names for those things.
Yes, yes. But this person, and I suppose the guilt of it, like if you've been hustling, 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 and you've always been giving your all, and then one day you wake up and realize, I can't sustain this. You see, this is where the quiet quitting is. I can't sustain this, or it is not being recognized. It is not being recognized. So if you wake up and you're on those two things, that you're not quitting, you are smartly recognizing that this is not a win-win solution, and you want to act accordingly. Don't let people convince you into thinking that you're quietly quitting. You're not. And so those who are quietly quitting, that's the one, where I'm saying that doesn't profit you. Coming to work every day where you're doing nothing, you are just sitting there. I once had I remember when I first started to work, someone told me, like, when they go to the office and they're upset at people, they don't answer the phone.
Okay.
That was part of their job to answer the phone. And when they're upset at people, they don't answer the phone. They let it ring.
Okay.
They only pick it up if the boss is around. But if the boss isn't around, they don't even pick up the phone. That is quiet quitting, right?
Okay.
And so you have
That's a
to figure out
protest.
who
That's
that is.
protest.
Right.
Okay.
Who are those people? Because those are the ones that are bringing down your productivity.
Mm.
And those are the ones that you have to determine what do we want to do with them. But if you are in the group that determines this is not a win-win scenario, this is not really working for me, then there's a completely different approach for them. And I'll have some suggestions for that.
Well, that's all right. Bring them on.
Well, the first thing I like to say to people is that you have no strategy. And because you have no strategy, there's no prioritization. People are going to work and everything is important. So you can only physically do so much, but leaders not bothering to sit down and say, okay, let's prioritize that. And in order to prioritize, I have to have a strategy. I have to know where are we going? What are my objectives? A strategy for operating that. And then I have to know what are the key results I'm looking for. Because on a day-to-day basis, that helps me to tell my people, we have 20 things to do that are important, but these 10 are the most important. In order to get the 20 accomplished, these 10 must be done first. So let me narrow you in and not make you feel that you have to do all 20. Let me give you an order.
Mm-hmm.
And because organizations have leaders who are unable to prioritize, it leads to overwhelmed, overburdened employees who feel like in order to just get my job done, I need to work 18 to 20 hours a day in my life. And so if you want to attach that, tackle that situation, start with ensuring that you give people the capability to make decisions and to prioritize.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, okay then. Here's a comment. In our public service, we have quiet quitting since long time. Yes. And you know that, and maybe it's because coming from my generation, that quiet quitting ain't easy. Those people who quit and still come to work, they actively work every day to do it. But you out here giving 18 hours or giving 12 hours or 8 hours and then thinking, oh, you know what? I need a break. You're not quiet quitting. And to help you, let me help you by prioritizing. Let me help you by actually having a strategy that we're going about. Let me help you by giving you key results so that you can focus. What is missing for those people who are quietly quitting is clarity. Clarity as to there's just too much to be done. How do I figure out which ones need to be done and to be prioritized?
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one. You said you had a few things.
Oh, well, that's all one.
Oh, that was it. All right,
Well,
that's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
Following from that is all the others, which is then
Okay.
that requires you to pay attention to who your employees are. All the drills that we tell people
Okay,
that we
because
should do.
that's what I'm going to say. Because then, if you are looking at this from the point of view as a leader, if you're seeing that this is happening amongst your team, and you're looking at it from the point of view that your employees are feeling disengaged, then you want to understand what motivates them, what's important to them. How can you get them to a point where they don't feel so disengaged and they feel like what they're doing matters and has value, and so they are willing to put out the effort? And how
Wait,
can
hold on. Are you going back to the 12-hour work days or 14 hours work days? Because where I'm coming from is with strategy and with prioritizing and clarity, it means that you don't expect employees to be working 12 to 14 hours work days consistently.
Right, but that's not who we're talking about. You were talking about the individual who's coming to work and working 8 hours. Or they're coming to work and they're not doing what they should be doing, or they're doing the bare
Okay.
minimum.
Okay. I got you. Okay, so we are on the true quiet quitters. All right, good. Got you. I'm with
Well,
you now.
I'm calling those disengaged employees.
Okay, you're calling them disengaged employees.
Yeah,
Okay,
because
now I'm
I'm
clear.
working with the terms that are being used now.
Yes. Okay. All right. Good. I know. I'm like screaming into the void. Listen, it's Quiet quitting is those people who come to work and don't give you 8 hours. Those are the ones who are quitting, and you are now saying we call those disengaged employees,
Right.
which makes sense.
So,
Yes.
so if as an employer or as a leader, you're recognizing that your employee is coming to work and they're actively
Mm-hmm.
disengaged, meaning that they could be doing it and they're not, or they're quietly protesting the way you're not looking, they don't answer the phone, or they're not doing the simplest of tasks, then you want to get to a point where you understand them and understand what's driving them and what has them so frustrated. And of course, then you have to make some hard decisions. So, is it something you can do something about? Is it something that you can improve? Is it that you have ruined this employee's expectation of their work and their work environment? Or is it that this person simply is beyond trusting you again and beyond giving you their enthusiasm again? And then that's where you have to make a hard decision. If you've done everything you
Mm-hmm.
can and nothing changes, well, then do you remain in each other's company or do you part ways?
Mm-hmm. So
Because
I say,
sometimes that's the best response to a person who's in that. Because if you keep that person, then they continue suffering, and both of you then are in a long-term negative relationship, like a bad
yes,
marriage.
like a very bad marriage. Not only that,
Mhm.
they have those toxic traits where they
Yeah.
try to get everybody just as disengaged as them. So thank you, Marjorie, for bringing me here, because I was already dismissing them and going for the poor overwork 12 to 18 hours. Let me see how I can work with you and let me see how I can make you better. But yes, I say definitely deal with the people who you can if they don't want to be here, which is why I say if you're quietly quitting and not giving 8 hours, then you don't need to be at the organization.
Yeah.
Exit that you didn't you put in a lot of energy and effort and you didn't feel like you were rewarded, or you didn't feel like you were appreciated, or whatever. Exit. You have control. Go there. This is a perfect time to find a job. Go there and find it, or speak up to say, in order for me to stay here, this is what I would like to see. So I see a note in the comment section that says we need more managers as coaches rather than micromanaging. And that is absolutely true, where you're not, if you're a leader coming into an organization and there is no trust, and therefore you are micromanaging, meaning surveilling. I am now, which is why people don't like remote work, because they feel like people will only do work when they see them.
Mm.
But that employee, it's much more than you just surveilling them and micromanaging them.
Mhm.
That's just putting a lot of effort on you. You want to say, as you say, can this relationship be restored?
Mhm.
Can this trust be rebuilt? And if it cannot, then you ask the employee to leave. And organizations know how to do this. I think when I was reading up for this, the other one was the quiet firing, where they make the job so untenable that employees have to leave. So that's the other aspect of it. So employees know how to get rid of people. I want to say to employees, if you're not, it doesn't profit you. You are not thriving if you come to work every day and you are not happy and you are so bitter that you're basically saying, see me, I'm just doing enough to get by here, but I am not
Mhm.
putting any more in here because they hurt me too bad. No, you don't say
Mhm.
that, but that is not profiting you. So you need to leave. So that's the first thing. And
Yeah.
if you are not leaving, then it says to me that then yes, you and the organization, the leaders in the
Deserve each other.
organization, well, need to figure out how to we work together to establish that trust, and then work in a way in which I can engage you. Unfortunately, I think a lot of organizations and leaders, number eight, don't know how to engage people. They're like, I don't know how to get through to these people. And then B, they don't want to. Basically, I don't want to engage you. I just want you to do the work.
Mhm.
And if I can get you to do the work without having to have you engaged, then that's the route I'm going to take, because they see that as least resistance. Because figuring out how to engage employee groups takes time. It takes investing time in something that is important to somebody else.
Yeah. And that's what's needed. because
Mm-hmm.
without that, then you are not going, you're going to have more of this situation. And coming up with new names for old scenarios doesn't change the fact that it is something that's been going on for the longest while that has not been fixed.
Oh my
And so the
God.
reason,
Can we pause? Can we pause here and just go through that again? Coming up with new ideas for
well, new
new names
names.
for something that already has existed does not, solve the problem. I love that. Thank you,
And it
Marjorie.
doesn't it doesn't preclude the fact that we have not been dealing with it, because you've talked about this has been happening for a number of years. I remember, and I'll tell you how long ago this was. I remember when we started working, so when we left university and so on, they had going on at the time, it was downsizing. That was where the word came into existence. And downsizing was another word for major firing, because organizations used to have layers where you had 5 or 6 people who were reporting at different levels. So you had a hierarchy, and there came a point where organizations realized they were going through a financial crisis. And so they fired middle management. And so then you had the leader and you had the entry level employee, and the two of them were then responsible. Well, the manager and the entry level employee, and the two of them were responsible for doing what the 6 people collectively would have been responsible for doing in the past.
Yes.
And
Right
then
sizing.
the phrase that, well, no, it started out as downsizing, then
Oh,
it became right
downsizing.
sizing. It became right
Okay.
sizing with a little flair, to make it sound a little bit better. Because we weren't doing anything wrong. We were just making organizations right. And so then we started talking about going up. It's no longer business as usual. So you can't do things as you've always done. You have to learn how to do more with less.
And you see
But
what that
the problem
was.
is that's more than 20 years we've been saying that. So
But
now is a
what
norm, is no longer an exception.
and what that did was take the responsibility from productivity from the organization and put it on the individual.
Hmm.
And that is just not fair. And we have been struggling with that ever since. Where more and more just get, because you're right sizing, you're operating lean, and you're expecting people to do way more than they really can.
Hmm.
Or expecting to do every day what they can do every now and then. Or as we say now,
And
every now and again.
And the problem is that what happened was, because I think operating lean is something that's slightly different, only because typically, if you start a lean operation, you design a lean operation to run leanly,
Mm-hmm.
meaning that it is working with those minimal resources
Yes,
from the way
yes.
time it's
That's a good point.
designed.
Thank you, Marjorie. Mm-hmm.
But the hierarchical structure was a big, extensive thing that had a lot of steps, had this to be done and that to be done, and there were manual processes and all of that. And they didn't change the processes, but they changed the number of people who were available to
People,
do it.
right? Because let it be known right here that we're not saying, we're not advocating for more bureaucracy. In no way are we doing
We are
that.
advocating for lean structures. What can be automated? Better systems. There are places and organizations where people look at the work that they're doing and they realize that half of the tasks that they have to do are useless. And you know how they know? Because they don't do them. And nobody notices.
But talking about withdrawing, those are the people who really go through and try to figure out what can I not do and nobody will notice. and you're mixing them up with the poor people who are just overwhelmed and trying to figure out how to do more. But there's a comment here in the chat box where people are saying coaching, development plan, decision by employee or employer to exit relation. So yes, coaching, we want more development plans. We want more employees focusing and really trying to figure out how can we work through this together. But you are given a really important foundation to why we are where we are and why it's so concerning to the economy, because productivity is going down. And it's going down not because people are quietly quitting. They've been quit.
They've
They've
been
been
doing
doing
that
that for
for about
years,
20 years.
years. Our productivity is going down is because people are no longer willing to just come to work and continuously do the work of 3 people. It is not sustainable. COVID threw into that the understanding that you don't have to be doing this all the time to keep your job.
Hmm.
The great resignation
Resignation showed
that
you
came
that you
from
had
COVID
options.
shows you that you had options, and that what I've been saying in my book from chapter 1, which is we only engage in work relationships that are win-win.
Mm-hmm.
And that people, so this whole holding the head, and it's because people are not willing to work 18 hours. No, this is a result, as Marjorie said, that goes way back, and we're aging ourselves to the 80s, where you talked about downsizing and right sizing and lean, whatever, where you have moved productivity away from the organizational responsibility it really is. How can I create environments in which people could thrive? This is what we do, what we help you do, into, well, let's just throw it on the individual and ensure and let them know that they need to step up to the game.
Tell
And
them
if
that
it
they need to run faster because that's what
run
it's done.
faster with less
Yeah,
whatever,
you have
because
to
it's
run
easier.
faster because you can no longer get your job done in 8 hours. So you have to put in 12 in order to get it done. There's
Yes.
nobody who's putting in the effort or energy to say, well, is this job designed to the best that it can be so that it can be done in 8 hours and achieve the result? That
Yes.
never happened. And that is the missing link. And for me, when I hear this whole talk about quiet quitting, I'm saying that what is happening now, the big discussion that's going on now, to me, it's nonsense. It's nonsense because it is a new label for an old problem. It adds no value to the
Yes.
discussion. The big worry that's coming up now about it is useless because it's nothing new. There's going to be a lot of hype, and then people will stop talking again because they haven't changed anything. What I think
Mm.
needs to happen, I think that there needs to be redesign of work and redesign of organizations. We are talking about the future of work. We've been talking about it for the last 2 years. Just because we're going back now from we coming out of COVID does not mean we need to stop the discussion. We need to consider, how do we work differently? If for the last 2.5 years we figured out how people can work from home and get jobs done, why do we need to now come back and spend 8 hours in the office where the manager needs to eyeball you to know that you're working? What were they doing for the
Because
last 2.5 years?
you know what? Because it's easy and it's what you know, which is why I go back to strategy. Because when you deal with a strategy, when you say, okay, we need to be here, there's uncertainty, what strategy are we going to occupy? Then you have to ask yourself, well, what design, what organization design will support that strategy? What does our organization need to look like? And
Absolutely.
how does it need to be designed in order to get that strategy? And so people are not doing that. They just want to go back to what I'm familiar with. So every time I hear a CEO stand up and say these things to the organization, and it grinds my gears, because I'm thinking, you have too many resources at your fingertips to be making this common mistake. It tells me you have not thought through the issue. If you are just coming down to the fact that, well, we got too much people and there's not enough productivity, that's a low reach. you don't
And
you
quite
don't need to
frankly,
say
and quite frankly, that's a bad reflection on you as the CEO. If you have all these
precisely.
resources and your productivity is low, then it's not the problem with the people and the resources, the problem with you.
And how
You should be
your
able to
organization is designed.
reorganize them so that you can get higher productivity.
Yeah, nobody in any nobody has to be trained. You could take a 13-year-old off the street and give them an organization and say, well, we have low productivity and so many people. The first thing they'll say is, well, our people need to work harder. That doesn't require much thought.
Hmm.
What you have to understand is that you have people who are in there working 12, 16, 18 hours just to get things done. You have people in there barely working 8 hours. Your problem is you can't tell the difference.
Hmm.
You can't tell the difference between working less than 8 hours, who really quite quitting, and who are just overworked. And so your first job is to identify that and give them structure. The people who are working 12 to 14 hours, ask, how do we redesign this organization to give them brief? How do we say to the people who are working under 8 hours, I'm sorry, yes, Marjorie, the disengaged, can we rebuild and repair our relationships or let them go? Because it's a toxic relationships, they need to go. But we know that organizations today, because it's so hard to get people, they're desperate and they will keep anybody, which is why those who are really quiet quitting probably are like going, I'm going to try and pretend that no, rebuild those relationships. And then, or ask the people who are not contributing to go someplace else. You'll be much more successful elsewhere. And really do the hard work of what leaders need to be doing, rather than just relying on the old ways that we know don't work. Oh, there's
Okay,
a
we have
question in the
we
chat
have
box.
two comments. So I see the comment from Samantha, but before that We had this one that attention needs to be placed on the employee journey for more engagement and
Yes.
fulfillment to take place. And you're right, because that is not happening.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That is what HR is for. What is the employee journey? What is how are our employees moving through? What can we do? Which is one. The worst thing you can do as an organization, as a leader, is to treat everybody the same. As to say, we have no, it's not. There's distinctions in here. Call them out. It's like when one person makes a mistake and they bring everybody together because they don't
Yeah.
want to deal with that,
That one
No.
person.
Yes.
Mhm.
Perfect. I love that. Mm-hmm.
All right. And then the second comment here is from Samantha. Do you think, well, a question, do you think that the fatigue caused by COVID, physically for some people and mentally for others, is somewhat responsible for this? Can it be that people being really not able to do more than their job description be also be responsible for quiet quitting? COVID has put people through physical, mental, emotional stress for 2 years, and recovery may not be over. What's your view on that?
Well, I say a hard T, yes, and that's not coming to work and doing what your job description is. It's not quite quitting. I am doing what you pay me to do, and if you want me to go above and beyond, then pay me for that as well. You're not getting extra work for no value. And so, yes, COVID, that fatigue, that physical, that emotional has heightened for people. Oh, I can't
Mhm.
continue to do this. So I say yes, a big, big yes to that. And I agree. What do you think, Marjorie?
I agree. I think COVID has had a lot of an impact on that. And I think it's because it has also helped us to think differently about work. Just like you say, you're physically drained and you come to a point where you say, I'm not giving it anymore. I'm not doing this anymore. I cannot. I just don't have it to give. And so people are relooking how much they're putting out without reward. And they're quite rightly within their means to do. Quite, it is your right, absolutely, to be able to do
And
that.
and don't let anyone make you feel guilty about that. You have that. You're the representation for you. So you can continue, Margie, to put up the comments that
Yeah,
are
I
coming
see
in
another
and,
one
and,
coming
and
in.
stuff. And
So
particularly
there you
for
go.
women, when you have the work and then during COVID, then you have to deal with your children. Not that children are bad, but you had to deal with ensuring your children are right,
But
getting
that's a
educated,
reality. That was a reality. And maybe don't say women, parents, because if it
parents.
was a
Thank you.
single father, they had the issue of having to figure out how to deal with their job and deal with the children. And the children had to be online to do their school. They had to be entertained if they weren't at school. And all that had to happen on the one system that originally wasn't used to that same degree, or the one space in the house you had to figure out how to use it. It was stressful for people, and you didn't have a break, and you didn't have the usual release that you would have because you couldn't go out and hang out with friends. So there has been a big emotional shift, and the Gallup survey has shown us that the level of happiness, the level of satisfaction has dipped across the globe. So we know that generally speaking, people are frustrated, they're not as happy as they were, they're not as engaged as they were. But it has brought us to a point, I think, where we recognize we want more, and people are willing to ask for it. You're no
And
longer
not
willing
only
to
we want
accept.
more, yeah, we deserve more. That it
Yeah.
highlights, and thank you for pointing that out, because yes, there are single fathers that are in the midst, or parents who are working in tangent to really
Mhm.
perform. But yes, we deserve more. It highlights how much free labor you have been given to an organization, and that how exhausted you have been. Okay, and this comment
This comment,
or question?
yes. So companies need to start realizing that employees have a choice too, and I think that's
Yes,
that's true. Lots of
that's it.
organizations were
Let's
not
put a full
realizing
stop
that.
there.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
As you mentioned, we have now realized that there are more and more lucrative options. And so I think that's what's happening with quiet quitting in the US with the millennials. They're
Mm-hmm.
recognizing that they can come and do this job for 8 hours. And as you say, they put a line there. They say, all right, my 8 hours are up. I'm out of here. I have my gig that I can go do. I have my hobby I can go do. I have my family I can go hang out with. They have other options and they don't want to spend more than their 8 hours as
Yes.
they have agreed in their contract.
People
People
have
have
families.
families and lives outside of work, and they are more and more able to put themselves first. The playing field is not level. Okay, what else?
As you have management and executive level
Yes.
employees who don't do more than 8 hours but require their subordinates to do it, who require their team members to do it. Yeah. who are like, I'm utilizing your labor to get my work done, and then not necessarily recognizing that this is not sustainable. And not everyone is doing that. So it's really important to focus, as you say, on that. And when we say that people are coming giving 8 hours, it's not that they don't recognize that every now and then you may have to put in an extra hour to get the job done, right?
Which I think people are willing to do. That's not a
Yes.
problem. People will give the extra effort this week because you have a big project and you have to put in extra effort, even maybe longer than a week. You'll do it on a short time basis. But I think what's happening is it is the norm, and that's the problem.
The expectation, yes. Let's
Hmm.
see. Other than cross training, how do we treat engaged and productive employees who have not progressed in the organization because positions have not become available? Noting this can lead to frustration. So, this is an important part because
Hmm.
this is something that I discuss a lot with clients, because they come in, and especially with younger populations, they say, well, after 2 years, they want to be promoted.
Hmm.
And we don't have the room to promote everybody so high up. We have got to move out from the position that a promotion is just you're getting a you're being moved up in the organization, and really treat the job as, this is it. This is a great job. We're going to help you develop the job. We may switch certain things in the job to make it enrich. We're going to sit down and design a job and reward you accordingly, so that you don't have a situation where you only have 5 management positions and you have 15 people who are working effectively. You can't promote all 15 into managers,
Hmm.
right? So you have to really enrich the job in a way that the employee, even though they're not getting, say, to a manager, they're being recognized for their expertise, their experience, and they're being rewarded accordingly. And
Hmm.
so that you don't hang, the value of, am I doing a good job, only depends on whether I have a managerial position. Because first of all, not everybody is designed to be a manager.
Yeah.
This is an issue where you throw people into management positions just for the pay and the status, and then they get up there and don't want to do the work. This is how we end up where we are right now, right? They are not willing to do the work. And so this is a really important part that I'm saying, where you enrich the job so that you're doing something and you're being recognized, however your pay is, however your compensation is packaged, so that
Hmm.
you know you are valued.
Yeah,
That's
and
my thought. What do you think?
I wanted to say that I think what happens there as well, I'm glad you mentioned the reward part, because I think for a lot of younger people, what they're thinking is, I've done this, I know how to do this, and in their minds, they're not making enough money. They have a
Mhm.
certain lifestyle, there's certain things they want to acquire, there's certain
Yes.
things they want to accomplish, they want to move forward, and they're not getting rewarded financially speaking the way that they need to
Hmm.
be. And so I have had discussions, yeah, I've had one or two clients where I would have to say to them, that look at what you're learning and look at how this is positioning you for what you can do for the next few years. But sometimes it may be that as far as they're concerned, they just don't have the financial resources they need, and so they can't stay in that role for a while. They'll stay for a long time, they'll stay for a little while, they'll learn what they can, but then they must move on. And so I'll say to this, that maybe what happens after you've done the cross training and maybe the job has been enriched, if you're not getting the reward, that's sometimes where you have to make a decision. And sometimes people will leave the organization, go to another position in another organization, and then maybe come back to the first organization when a higher position becomes open or becomes available. So
Heck
that is sometimes an
yes.
option that you have to take.
Take it, take it, take it. Stop staying in jobs waiting for them to reward you and value you. Leave. And we know that research says that the only way you can get more money and more financial is to job hop. Job hop your life away. We are no longer in that environment where people are saying, well, how would it look if I have a job every 2 years? You're a valuable person who people are after. You're somebody that I want on my team, because when you come, you give my all, and you are somebody that will give me high value. And so do not feel guilty looking for other opportunities where you are valued, because the
Mhm.
organizations, they look to talk about loyalty. They don't think about loyalty when you're no longer valued to them. They quite rightly say, okay, we love you. No, you be asked to leave because we have some person else who can. You do the same. If it's not win-win, then you leave the organization.
Mhm. All right, putting up another comment. We have
Give me
yes,
give me a minute.
COVID
Let me turn
has.
off my.
All right. This comment here is yes, COVID has shifted the career focus. How do I work to build my own empire as well? Absolutely. There are a lot of people out there who are now, yes, the career, I like it. I like working for somebody else. But how do I get my own that I have that I can have some sense of security or some feeling of independence? Or how just can I find an opportunity to do something that I love? Maybe I like work, but I have a hobby that I'm really great at and I love it. How can I build that into something that's financially viable?
Oh my God, I love that. I think because, especially when you are recognizing, it highlights for you win-win scenarios again. You will take
Mm,
on, like, if people, like I have some clients who say it's really hard to get people to take on leadership roles. But if you're like going to build your own organization, sometimes you'll think, hey, this works for me. And organizations need to recognize that, hey,
mhm,
as long as it's win-win, we will get people. It's when they're just looking for their when you're just looking as an organization or a leader, when you're just looking out for your own point of view and not
mhm,
considering the other point of view, that's where we lose and we end up where we are, asking individual employees to conform rather than having the organization change to suit the environment that we're in.
mhm.
Yeah.
And then this comment exactly, if we can't find work that is within our purpose and passion, we will seek that from a gig or a hobby, and time becomes important. So sometimes when the employee is only willing to give their 8 hours, it's because there's something else that brings them greater fulfillment. And I think as leaders in an organization, we have to make a decision whether that is a bad thing or not. I think in many instances, it is seen as a bad thing. But if you think about it, it should not be, because what it's doing is it's helping the employee to feel fulfilled, to feel energized. And by the time they're coming back to you, then you're not getting this person who feels lifeless and drained, like they have nothing to give to the world. Well, they might be tired from working at night, but
Mhm.
they still have energy, they have enthusiasm, they feel like they're doing something of value. And you are still going to get a better employee if people are pursuing
That.
something that's important to them.
Yes, because every employee knows, I think Oprah said it at a show, you're not always going to be, sometimes you're going to be bored at work.
Yes.
You're not always going
She's
to
now
be,
famous for saying that. You're not
yes,
always going to love your job.
yeah, and
Mm,
it's going to be
mhm,
true. There are certain things that are tedious but necessary. What happens is
mhm,
in when a leader cannot make a exact direct line between the tedious things that you're doing to the necessity of it, and that's a failure right there. I know this is tedious. I know that this is doesn't seem important to you, but let me show you how important this is and why it's essential. You and I do
mhm,
that on a daily basis. This is so tedious, but I know it's important, and I will regret it later on if I don't put in this foundation. And leaders neglect to let help employees to see that. And it's also
mhm,
important to recognize, again, it also goes back to that very fundamental thing. In addition to, making individuals have to be figure out how can I be productive and abscond their responsibility as organizational leaders to help them. It also goes back to that understanding that, oh wait, I think I forgot my point there. Sorry. I lost I lost I lost my thought. It'll come back. Just
okay.
you go on and talk, and then
Well,
it'll come
while you
back.
were doing that, we have another comment coming up here that there are HR professionals who actually frown upon job hopping. And it is sometimes difficult to explain that. And that's right. I remember having that discussion with someone who was saying to me that they were, I think I was doing a course on
Oh, it
yeah,
just came back.
preparing for jobs. Well, jot it down before you forget.
Yes, let
And
me just
they
jot it
were
down.
talking about the fact that they've been trying to get work, but when people look at their CV to see that maybe they've had uh, two different jobs or three different jobs in the last 5 years, that is frowned upon, and they're asking about that and what does that mean, which is interesting because in many organizations they're in a position where they can't pay people what they need, and they need people just for a short-term job, but they want to make it into a permanent job and stretch it into this long range where they have to find the money. Whereas if they thought about it as a 2-year gig, where they hired people for 2 years, get them to focus on doing what needs to be done for 2 years, and just let them go, people would be happier. So I agree and I understand that there are HR professionals out there who look on it in that way. But I think it's important for you as the person who has it on your CV to explain why it was a value for you, to talk about what you gained from having gone through the process. And
Oh,
if
I
you
love that,
have an
Marjorie.
and if you have an organization that does not understand the value that you are bringing in spite of how you got it, so instead of you having that one experience, that one day's experience for the last 10 years, you had 10 different things in the last 10 years that give you 10 different experiences, and therefore you're more valuable. If they can't understand and appreciate that, they're not the place for you to be. I know that it's very easy to be said. It's harder when you're out there and you're looking and you need to find something to support yourself. But understand that if they don't get you, you're never going to be happy there.
Oh, Marjorie, that's beautiful. Because let me tell you what I will do. If I stand across a room from some person in HR who tells me that, which is very privileged, I would say this is a deep red flag in my mind. And I will say, I don't think that we will work out.
Mm.
Because if you're an HR manager, and I know HR managers work really hard to upgrade their skills and to develop and to talk about the future of work, you will know that this is not an issue. This
Mhm.
reminds me of, when we were coming into work, HR managers were people who were failed managers in another department, and they stuck them in HR because they didn't know what to do with them. You are not
Mhm.
operating, so let me stick you in HR, and then they come up with these old-fashioned working modes. But I approve of and I agree with Marjorie's approach, which is to educate the person and seek to build a connection and not do what I will recommend, which is understand that this is not a place I will want to work if this person is leading or have input for HR.
Mhm. But I think that stems from the point of view, as one of the comments earlier, where the organization was in the driver's seat. And so they felt that they had the full power, where they could look at a person who's highly qualified, highly capable, highly competent, and say to the person, well, the fact that you've been jumping around to different jobs for the last 5 years is a problem. So we're not sure that we can bring you in because you're not going to stay with us. And now that we are getting more and more into a situation where it's difficult to find good employees that are capable, organizations may be in a position where they're going to have to change their language. It hasn't hit the Caribbean the same way that it has hit the rest of the world. But there are a lot of people who are highly capable, confident, who are not willing to stay. So they come
And it
in,
should not be. Mm-hmm.
yeah, they come in. If it isn't what they wanted, or when they're negotiating, they're not hearing the numbers they want, they're not hearing the job, they're not hearing the options, the freedoms that they want, they're not taking it, they're moving on. That has
Yes.
been happening a lot more internationally. It will come into the Caribbean. And so leaders in the Caribbean have got to prepare themselves for the fact that this attitude where you're not welcoming people who hop around to jobs is ancient.
Is Asian, and it's a sign of you are not ready for the future. You're not ready for this for you're not ready to prepare the organization to implement the strategy they need to implement in order to survive and thrive, right? And that is a bad sign. And too many CEOs and too many leaders sit and have HR people that they know are not ready, and they do nothing about it. And that there's a price that you're paying.
Yeah.
Organizations are beginning to see the price that you are paying for not really preparing, and this is not a surprise. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I will go back to what the point that I wanted to make, which is that
Yes.
we still have that tendency to treat employees as if they're a chair, a computer, where they
Mhm.
come in, just do as much as I try. Let me figure out how much I can get out of you, and don't bother me with your feelings and your thoughts
Mm.
and your opinions. We're dealing with humans and their complexity, and that I think is the secondary thing.
Okay. And we have another comment here. I try to empower employees by asking their thoughts on a decision which has to be made. It helps to get them thinking and provides opportunities for coaching and engagement, of course. A
Mm,
strategy my mentors use with me and a source of much learning. Absolutely.
we love that.
Absolutely.
Yes. And that's an investment of time, right? And when we say investment, it will pay off in the future. And that's where we really
Mhm.
want. Even if you are the one making the final decision, helping people to understand where they fit in and whatever. Because when we are employees, one of the key things that what stresses us is we don't have much control. we're uncertain, and we have a lack of information. And
Hmm.
even if you're the one making the final decision, just including them gives them exposure, gives them a sense of, I think I know what's going on. I think I have some input. And that is so, so very valuable. And I love what you said here. You're modeling what your mentors used to do with you. This is why you get
Yeah.
mentors, people. You need some good mentors that can help you
Yeah.
get the best approach.
And remember what we say of leaders, that leaders, the responsibility of leaders is to develop more leaders. So,
Yes.
absolutely modeling the behavior that your mentors modeled for you. Excellent. Now, in our less than 3 minutes remaining, let's do our closing comments. So, my closing comment is this: I say that quiet quitting is really much ado about nothing. I say that it is talking about something that has existed for a long time, and we are renaming a problem that has always existed. We haven't done anything to solve, and we are now making it seem like a new thing that it's a new trend. We're going to run around, talk about it, talk about it, talk about it, and nothing's changing. And I say that we need to get to a point where we see it as an opportunity to innovate how organizations work, how jobs are designed, and how we are asking people to perform. What are your closing comments?
Oh, wow. I'm just going to borrow that and say I 100% agree with it. I think that when you're talking about quiet quitting, define it so that you
Mhm.
ensure that you're talking about the same thing where people are talking about. I think it's important that we recognize organizations are responsible for, have the responsibility to ensure that they're helping their employees figure out how to be as productive as possible, and they have to recognize they're dealing with human beings, not a chair or a computer, and really work to figure out how can we help you to thrive. And as you say, not just toss out new terminology without a full understanding and the nuance that's involved in creating an organization that thrives, and also ensure that you have good strategy, that you do your strategy work so that you can have clarity for your people to help them figure out how can I prioritize so that I can get out from under this overwhelm and this feeling that I need to work up and 12 to 15 hours a day just to hang on. Yes.
Absolutely. And thank you very much, folks, for joining us this
I
evening and for
know.
being a part of this very active discussion. It definitely, I think, is something that we need to talk about in our organizations across the region. So keep the conversation going. Follow Sonia on LinkedIn. You'll find her, Sonia Lane Gartside. You can follow me as well here on LinkedIn. Share your comments and your questions with us. And we look forward to seeing you at the next session. Thank
Yes.
you and good night.
Thanks. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.